Well, last week we did this little cabinet underneath the sheep herder's bed, and I haven't put these sideboards on yet because I wanted to access the inside from the outside, and I didn't want to mess with these benches in the way. So I'd like to put the benches on next, but there's a rod that goes across the back end that helps keep those sides square, and there's also a front wall that goes in where I'm sitting here now. So I'm going to put the rod in across the back and then install the side benches that'll pretty much stable up these sides, and then I'll see if I can't put this front wall in. So this is the rod that was across the back end of this wagon, still the original rod. And I've had this pipe clamp across just to kind of stabilize these sides. But I'd like this pipe clamp out of the way so I could bring these side benches in. So I need to put this rod in. I'd like it just to clear this tailgate right about in here. This door is kind of in the way maybe. Well, through this whole project, we were using these old original irons, and I'm not running them through the sandblaster, so they have the rust, they have the very different shades of paint that has been painted through the years. So it's a kind of a mottled color. And these bolts that I'm putting in, this one here and several others, are actually brand new bolts. But I want them to look old and rusted so they match the rest of the iron. And this is how I do that. Well, in this old bolt bin that I have assortment of bolts from 1/4 inch up to 3/4 in hex bolts. Then I go from 1/4 inch to half, anywhere from 1/2 inch to 6 inches. Then on this far end, I have my washers and nuts and all that type of stuff. Well, this bolt bin actually came from a wheelwright who was retiring. And when he retired, he was actually my age, but so I was much younger then, and I bought this and all of his equipment back almost like 30, 35 years ago now. So many of these bolts are old bolts that were still before they put any type of markings on the heads, but there are a number that I've had to replace, and so they are the newer bolts that now have the markings on the top. Well, these carriage bolts are the same. These are some 5/16 old carriage bolts before they started putting any markings on the head. You see, these are just a smooth dome on these carriage bolts. Well, when I buy new carriage bolts, they have these markings now on the heads. So in order to make them look old, I have to take that off. Well, these are some 3/8 carriage bolts that have no markings on the head, but they still have a little bit of a plating, it looks like, on them. These are some brand new 1 3/4 inch long carriage bolts. They're zinc plated and they still have this marking on the top. Now there are some bolts in this bin that are old and they have a higher dome to them in here than the new ones do. You can see the difference. And these come down to a fine edge where these have more of a blunt edge around the edge. Well, this is an old style bolt, but it's not the same bolts that came off of this sheep wagon. This is a bolt that came off, and you can see it has the shallower dome on it than this high dome carriage bolt. So I don't want to use these because they wouldn't match the bolts that were used. But these bolts will match. They both have a lower dome to them. But paint will not stick to zinc worth a hoot, and they are zinc plated so as not to rust. So my goal is to make these rust. I have a number of 3/8 square nuts, and I have them in all sizes actually. But I need these to rust also, and then flat washers, I need these to be rusted as well. So if any of you have been with me long enough that you watched me do the borax wagons, you know that I took all these markings off of these and I brought this edge down to a fine edge to match that old style bolt. Well, I have a sanding disc that's on my grinder and I have a wood backing plate, so I can run this on the side, and it's not generally thought to be too safe to do it on the side of a grinding wheel itself, but this is just a sanding pad that I can take these marks off with. So you can see I end up with a smooth surface, although it has the grinding marks left on it, but it takes the marks off and it also takes that zinc plating off. So these that have no markings on them, I still want to take any possible residue off. They might be plated. I want that to be non-plated. So I still end up with this head that has these fine grinding marks on them, and I'll deal with that in a minute. But you can see this comes down to more of a sharp edge on the edge of this carriage head. So when I put this nut on the end of these, the tip of this bolt is going to be showing about like so. Well, the end of this bolt is also plated. These nuts are not plated. So when I run them through the sandblaster, I'm not only going to sand the heads, but I'm also going to sandblast the last ½ inch or so of this so that I can get it to rust. And I'll also run these washers through the sandblaster to make sure they have no residue and they're a bright, clean iron. And so to manage all of these through the sandblaster, I just string them on a piece of wire, and then I can sandblast all of them at once. And some of these washers, oh, they have a little bit of old residue on them just because they're plain non-plated, but I'll sandblast all of these as well. So you can see here that I sandblasted the end of the threads. I left the inside coated with the zinc, and I sandblasted all the heads off. Then these nuts and washers, I have them all down to bare metal, which makes them more susceptible to actually rusting like I want them to. You know, probably 95, 98, 99% of the time that I'm doing restorations, I'm sandblasting to remove rust. This is one time that I'm actually sanding to create rust. I'm just going to dip this in my vinegar solution. And kind of let them rust. I'll do these as well. One thing about using my Leatherman, they're stainless steel, so they don't rust. So I'll just kind of let these air dry, and that rust will begin to form on all this raw bare metal. You know, through the process of sandblasting, it leaves such a bare, unprotected metal that it is imperative, if you want to prevent rust from happening, that you get them primed or painted as soon as possible. Even the moisture in the air will cause this unprotected metal to rust somewhat quickly, but it'll take a little bit of time. The acid in this vinegar will actually speed that up. You know, so it's only been about a minute since I dipped these, but you can see that rust already starting to form on some of these. A little bit of light rust already starting on the heads of these bolts. So while those nuts are curing and creating a little rust, I think if I measure from my inside iron, we're about 5 3/8 to my outside iron, and get these irons in position where they'll be ready to bolt when the nuts and bolts are ready. (53 3/8). 53 3/8. (86 1/2). 86 1/2. 5 3/8. 5 3/8. So this is where we ended up with. I did dip them one more time, and we have nice rust starting on these. They'll probably continue to rust even more yet. Washers and nuts, they also have a nice coating of rust starting on them. That's compared to, you know, where we started with the nuts. This is before they were sandblasted, and then these were the bolts that I started with as they were brand new and zinc coated, and you can see what a nice transition we have from brand new to nice rusty old looking bolts. So these new bolts will actually look old, and they'll kind of blend in pretty well, just like we want them. Nice patina to those. And that'll blend well with our aged wood. Now underneath these benches, there's some braces that fit about like so. The front two are a little different. The back two will be more vertical. But these go in and help support this bench as weight is on those. I'll go ahead and get those pre-drilled. Since they were already pre-assembled on the old original, they should bolt right back up. Now I can see I already got ahead of myself. I need to drill these 2 holes for bolts as well. I need to drill those before I put this rod in. I guess I got to take that off and drill these. So on this left side, I'm not quite sure why there are 3 holes on this side. And on the right side, there's just 2 holes. The 3rd hole is missing. But it is what it is. I also have 3 old original bolts that will fit right in here. The old original rusty nuts and washers. And we'll be right back to original. Now this brace on the right side is a little shorter, but it looks like I was able to salvage the original bolts, so that'll be nice. But the brace on the left side went from the 2nd bolt down out to the 3rd bolt out on the end of this iron. It looks like this brace for the right side goes to the 2nd bolt down and then to the 2nd bolt instead of the 3rd bolt on this side. So it's more of a right triangle brace than the other side. So these top 3 bolts, this was the original old bolt, and these 2 bolts are new that I made rust to match the old one. And on the side iron, this was the original. It has a little dab of white paint that matched the white was on the iron. And these other 3 are new, but made old. Now this right side bench is kind of sticking up from the sideboard a bit. But if I put that bolt on the inside corner where all these other ones go, it should suck that down. That makes quite a difference. I'll do that to the next one also. Well, this gets us braced up on all 4 corners of these benches. I still have the 2 center supports to do. There's 2 on each side, and then there's a box that goes on each side. We'll get into that probably next week, and I'm still trying to sort through my old pieces of what's left of the framework for this front wall and the door. It's kind of a puzzle, but I think we'll get her. Appreciate you following along. Thanks for watching.